You are listening to The World as I See It podcast. 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 As I See It podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. This is part 2 of my conversation with Kaylee. Last week, we talked about the training and the switch from a cane to a dog. Today, we're diving into the reality of her college life, independence, and, Kaylee, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I had a great time last week, and I'm super excited to continue sharing my story.
Yeah. So, you go to a huge school. How did that first day on such a massive campus feel for you?
So I attend Missouri State University, which is in Springfield, Missouri, and I'm from a small town. And so one of the big reasons, other than the Disability Resource Center and accessibility, that I chose Missouri State was because I loved the way that campus is rather large, but it feels pretty small. And I loved that because I'm definitely not a city girl. Um, and so, just that small town feel was exactly what I needed, even though
Yeah.
Springfield is the third largest city. But that first day on campus really didn't feel like too much out of the ordinary. It was just like going to class. And I just went to the building. I had walked my schedule before, so I knew exactly where to go. Um, and I knew the classroom, and I had emailed my teachers previously, and so I just walked in, went to class, and that was it. There was nothing, too special, too crazy about it.
So, I know that every college is different, but explain the accessibility and the accommodations of your school and what they offer that makes your life easier.
Yeah, so for anyone who doesn't know, if you go into university or college, however you want to phrase that, with an IEP, your IEP does not translate. So you have to work with the whatever type of resource center your school offers to be able to, figure out how your IEP can translate into whatever is going to come next.
Mhm.
And so it was, I have the Disability Resource Center, and I was able to work with them and get a list of accommodations for every single class. And even if they don't apply to specific classes, it's really nice to have them on on the list. And so if something ever does arise, I don't have to worry about adding it to my accommodation note. And
Right.
the Disability Resource Center they've been nothing but amazing and helpful, and like they just really truly are like such a gift. When it came to picking a university, I prayed that God would lead me somewhere where, I wouldn't have to be a guinea pig. I grew up going to public school, and that's not always very easy. And I didn't want to be a guinea pig while I was trying to learn and expand and become more independent
Yeah.
outside of my house. And so I feel like Missouri State has been the perfect place for me to do that. And I felt nothing but loved and supported by their entire staff while doing so.
Yeah. And I think that that's a big thing to consider, if you're visually impaired and looking for college, because in my future I want to go to college, and that's going to be one of the things that goes into my considerations is
Right.
their accessibility
Yeah.
center.
And one of the things about Missouri State is they are the only university in Missouri that has a disability resource center that is as developed and up to date
Oh,
as
wow.
it can be. Yeah.
That's interesting.
When I was doing my research, there really wasn't another college that stuck out to me as accessible. So.
Right. So, how do you handle the responsibilities of, your guide dog in college at the same time? And is it hard to balance things like feeding the dog with your actual schoolwork?
Yeah, so it's really not that difficult, or at least I haven't found it difficult yet. I grew up having pets and, being responsible for some of their feeding and grooming and things like that. And so it's really nothing new to me. I feed him once in the morning, once for dinner, and then he gets a little snack. And I kind of build my schedule around his. He works a strict routine, and he is a dog that thrives on routine. And so
Right.
I never want to disturb him in his routine when I have the flexibility to make sure that he still gets to eat when he's used to.
Right.
He had a lot of change. He came from Florida to Missouri. That's a big change as is. And I
Yeah.
felt like changing his mealtime just wasn't something that was necessary for me. So
Right. So, do you live on campus? And if so, does that make it more complicated to take care of your dog's needs?
yes and no. So far it's really been fine. The way I live in a dorm, so I do live on campus, and luckily there is like a patch of grass behind the dorm that I can take him to go relieve himself, and it's pretty accessible. It's like the elevator to get down there is literally right outside of my um like dorm door. And so that really hasn't been a challenge. I'm really interested this coming semester because it's our first semester with in-person classes. I'm really interested to see how we are able to navigate like bathing him because I've been home enough this past semester that I've been able to bathe him at my own home. But that might not
Right.
always be the case. So figuring out a good way to do that is going to be interesting.
Yeah. So, what does a typical class look like, for you? Do you use Braille textbooks or do you rely more on technology, to get your work done? Like, what is a class like for you?
So I try not to take really big like lecture classes. I find them quite anxiety inducing, and I find it really hard to um hear the professor since I can't see what's on the board. It's imperative that I'm able to hear and understand what they're saying. And in big
Yeah.
lecture halls, that's just not always possible. And
Right.
I find that more times than not, it makes it harder on me and harder to learn. I do not use physical Braille textbooks. They are incredibly large and bulky, and they take up a lot of space. And so
Mhm.
usually what happens is I purchase the textbook from like the physical copy of the textbook from the bookstore, and I submit my proof of purchase to the DRC, and they send me a converted format that's a little bit more accessible and digital. So then all I have to do is keep up with the textbooks, like the physical print copies of the textbook, and I just return them to the bookstore at the end of the semester.
Yeah. And in case you didn't like Braille books are huge. Like my English print book took up like at least 24 Braille volumes.
Yeah, they are really large, and you living in a dorm, you don't really have that space.
Yeah. You don't, and especially like even in the classrooms, like if you had a really big textbook, like there's nowhere to store all that. So, did you feel any pressure or limitations when choosing a major? Or feel like there were things that you couldn't do or were hard to do because of your vision?
Not necessarily. I found that choosing my major, I always knew that I wanted to go into a field where I could help other visually impaired people. And so I went
Mhm.
in as a psychology major, and then I did some research and I talked to a lot of staff, and we kind of decided that social work was more the route that I should go. And so I changed my major to social work, and I minor in psychology and disability studies, and then I will receive a certificate in advocacy writing. And so one of the biggest things that I have found is, when God opens a door, you better just walk on through it because
That's
he doesn't
right.
make mistakes, and it's so much easier to trust his process than trust your own.
Mhm. Yep, exactly. You know, are there specialized classes or organizations on campus that are specifically for blindness that you are involved with or that you want to start or have started?
I am actually unaware of any classes. I've not really looked into that. But organizations, there are 325 plus organizations on campus. So there's a lot of variety to choose from. We have a very diverse campus, and we're also an international school. So there's a
Mhm.
lot of different diversity that comes with that. But I also started an organization this past year called Bear's Dream, and DREAM stands for Disability Rights, Education, Advocacy, and Mentoring. And it has been such an honor and really a blessing, and it's been such a humbling experience as well to lead an organization like that. And you learn so much about other disabilities and other walks of life. Um, but it's also like the process of founding an organization like that. There's so much that goes into it that I don't think a lot of other people consider when
Right.
trying to do that.
Right. And I think that, with that type of organization that you started, like it also, brings awareness to, disabilities that may not,
The idea is
people may not be
the
aware
idea
of.
behind that is literally that students with disabilities on campus or students or staff that ally with the disabled community are, anyone is welcome. And the
Right.
idea is that we learn more, we advocate more, we educate more, and we contribute to making that difference that we want to see on our campus and beyond.
Yeah. Yeah. So, how has dating changed from high school to college?
So, if I'm going to be so honest, I did not date in high school. I had no time for it. I had, places to be, things to do, goals to accomplish, and I kind of still feel the same way about it now.
Okay.
I'm not against it. I think a lot of people think that like I'm opposed to dating, and that's not it. Um, I just trust that, God's timing is better than mine, and He has someone, specifically picked out for me, and whenever that person is supposed to come along, they will.
Yeah. And, I agree with that too. Like, that's, where I stand. So, does having a guide dog make it easier or harder to meet new people?
I think sometimes it's kind of a little bit of both. People are automatically more drawn to me because, oh, look at that dog, it's so cute. But then it really becomes more about my dog rather than me. So I don't know. I think it's kind of a catch-22.
Right. And I feel like, whenever they see the dog, they don't want the, actual connection with you. They just want, to talk to your dog and all this, and they don't want to
Right,
actually have a
which,
conversation
isn't
with you,
actually even
which,
allowed. So like and I think a lot of people forget that he's a working service dog, and so becoming his friend isn't really gonna happen.
right, right. So to wrap things up, is, you know, if there's one thing that you want everyone to understand about the visually impaired community, what would that be?
I think that it's really important to remember that blindness is a spectrum and not one experience is going to be for everyone. So, our
Mm,
experiences and the challenges that we face are specific and unique to us and our lives. And so, just because I have one condition and you meet someone else with the same condition doesn't necessarily mean that that person's experience with their eye condition is going to be the same.
right. So I really appreciate you taking the time to, talk to me and being so honest and open about your experience. Before we go, is there anything else that you want to leave with the audience?
I don't think so. Like I said earlier, when God opens a door, you better walk on through it.
That's right. So, Kaylee, I can't thank you enough for being, open and sharing your world with us today. It was an absolute blast having you on the show. And to everyone listening, I hope that this conversation gave you a new perspective. If you enjoyed this two-part series, please share it with someone who might find this helpful or interesting. Thank you for spending your time with us today. Stay curious and keep listening, and I will talk to you in the next episode.
You've been listening to the World as I See It podcast.